Good evening, Wayne D. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right, Reggie. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Anything you want to say before we get started?
Yes, all praise and thanks be to Allah, the most benevolent, the most merciful. I like to say that I love my mother, I love my father, I have love for the mother of our son, and I love our son. Thank you.
Well, when I spoke to you the other night and you was explaining to me the title of this segment of the Marin County Courthouse, would you like to explain to the viewers what you want to entitle this one?
I wanted to entitle this segment White Supremacy and White Privilege in Marin County Superior Court and Child Support.
And is there anything that you would like to say on why you came about that title?
Well, what's interesting is we spoke on the case that I had that these two things came up, the white supremacy and white privilege, that is in Marin County Superior Court, and it is masked behind court officials that I've dealt with in this family law, probate, and child support case.
And how about sharing it with the viewers so they can get a little bit more understanding than what you're talking about?
Okay, so from my experience when I went to the family court, I noticed that I was treated like an animal, worse than an animal. And this just shows that nothing has changed with discrimination and racism in 2019 and 2018 and the years previous. So what I noticed was that everything that I did in my case, I couldn't really make anything happen. And the people that were hearing my case, Judge Adams, um, dang Reggie, I don't. It's kind of just, man.
You saying that you didn't receive any justice as far as with your case?
No, I didn't receive any justice because our son was taken away to the East Coast, and I was slandered as a perpetrator, and they used my race against me to harm myself and our son. And it was a treatment that someone that was Caucasian wouldn't have received. In the family court, it is known that men are treated unfairly. But the thing is that Marin County Superior Court has a history of racism, and some of the beginnings were from the 70s when Jonathan Jackson, brother of George Jackson, came to that courthouse and tried to free the six prisoners. I forget the name of it, the names of the individuals, but what happened was that it ended up becoming a shootout and people got injured. And since then, they have not liked black people. And I believe before that they didn't like black people, but how that relates to the family court is that any kind of court is really not for black people. The experience that I had was that I understood and noticed that all the laws that they had applied to me because I was black, but these individuals that I dealt with were above the law. And this is the privilege and the supremacy. So, me being a father, I don't trip off race, but they made me trip off race, meaning Judge Adams and the family court staff, because they treated me below a human. And people say that things have changed, but this is what happens in the court because there are no cameras to see this and nobody to understand this unless they're in that arena. And they unjustly took our son. And I just was in a legal battle fighting these people. And one thing that I was black and Asian or black that worked against me. And another reason was that I didn't have the monetary, or I didn't have the funds to pay one of their lawyers to play their game. So my experience was not too great. And I haven't seen our son in, I think since July of last year. This privilege and supremacy, white supremacy, stems from the time of colonization of the United States, and it has manifested itself in the judicial system and with some public officials and civil servants and public servants. And it feels and it seems that these people have traded in their Ku Klux Klan robes to wear police uniforms and judge uniforms. And this is a systematic and systematic racism and institutional racism. And this is what plagues the family court in Marin. Judge Adams, the family court presiding judge, has had a history of fixing and rigging cases since the 90s with her mentor, Judge Michael Dufusy. They have been running a racketeering scam, and I got to witness this firsthand as a participant in the family court. And although this case was civil, I was treated very poorly. It's reminiscent of what the slaves went through when they were separated from their families, and different members of the family would be shipped off to different parts of the states or different states. And this is what happened to me, where they separated our son, and these people being white, they preached that the father should be involved with the son and the mother as well, but they don't practice what they preach, or what they're saying doesn't apply to black people. So just like our past, I was a victim of this situation where Judge Adams and the family court wanted to separate myself from my family. And while they did that, they monetized by placing a false domestic violence restraining order on me, and also coercing me into participating in the child support grant program, which is really a grant program for the state to make money. And these programs have been designed for black men and minority men and men in general, for them to fail. And that's the history and nature of our country, is that while they marvel as a great country, this is how they treat people of darker skin. The flip side is that these people that I've dealt with, they are racist, they're very arrogant, and they have abused what God has given them. So God has given them the intellect, and He has given them wealth to become judges, and not anyone can just become a judge. But Judge Adams has used this authority to cause wrong and harm to people. and she has used that to gain, and her friends to gain. Her friend Joanna Kleppe, the attorney that represented the mother of our child and her family, and they fixed and rigged the case for 40 to 100 grand, and basically sold off our son like he was a slave in an auction, and persecuted me for being a domestic violence perpetrator when I have no history of domestic violence. These scenarios have happened throughout history because they look down upon black people. The reality is that if we go into race, the first people were black. So if you think of the treatment of white people against black people, they're being disrespectful to their fathers, since the black man is the father of the civilization. We believe in God, and God doesn't look at people for their skin color. He looks at them, for what's in their hearts and their good and bad deeds. And, our judicial system is based on slavery and treating minorities poorly. It also has to do with the fraud of our government being a federal corporation for profit, and everything they do is to enslave people, especially minority men and black men. And this is the doing of the Freemasons to cause division, so people will fight each other. And it's a secret society or a fraternal order, and a lot of these judges and police are involved in this. And an example would be that when the police kill people, they're able to get away with the crime. So there's many reasons behind that they're part of a fraternal brotherhood, which is a code of blue wall of silence, where they're like brothers. They don't speak out against one another if one is done wrong. So this is a fraud because no one is above the law. Another reason is that the state, as an artificial corporation, gives these police immunity, and the state, being a creation of a man, doesn't exist, but they give them immunity, and they are sovereign citizens, even though sovereign citizens can't exist. But this is what they do. Another reason being is that they have relationships with the DA and the judges and the Bar Association and the Commission on Judicial Performance, that they all protect one another. And this is just the nature of what I was up against, that I knew that these people were doing me wrong, but I could find no one to help me. And I soon found out that they were all against me. So this is the thing, is that the family court is structured in a way to attack the man, and for the state as a third-party debt collector, a third party, to have a monetary interest and gain in the case. So in my sense, or in my case, me being a man, I was already in a bad situation in the court, even though we have the equal protection clause in the Constitution that everyone will be treated fairly. Judge Adams and her staff, they don't follow that. And what was interesting is that these people like Judge Adams appear to be civilized, but they use the feminism to, use that as a way to attack a man and destroy a family. for whatever wrongdoing they've had, and they allow this kind of behavior in these courts because they bring the state so much money. They get funding from restraining orders. They get billions of dollars from child support, and that all goes to the state treasury. And that mostly hurts poor people because they don't have the finances to afford a representation, and they might not have the education to fight the people for their wrongdoing. Also, fighting these people is very exhausting and not productive because you're fighting people that are supposed to be about change for the system and for the family, but they're really in it for monetary gain. My treatment was bad because, I'm African American, I'm black, I'm Japanese, and they don't like black people. Me being Asian, they don't like Asian people, but they tolerate Asian people. And in Marin County, they will hire minorities, blacks and Asians, but that doesn't mean that they're not racist. And then they will use those people to go up against the minority people. So this was the issue, was that, me being a father, granted by God, I had to go up against a whole system because Judge Adams and her staff had it in their mind, and they had it set how they wanted me to be. They weren't realizing who I was as a man or a person, but they wanted to make me somebody that I wasn't, to justify in kidnapping our son and placing an unlawful debt onto myself. So this is another thing, is that I've never received any justice from these courts. The probate court and the family court were both color of law courts, and they used these courts for means to prosecute me and take our son out of the state. And I feel that someone that wasn't black would have got better treatment than that. And I wanted to share that with the people, that this is what they do. These people like Judge Adams and Joanna Kleppe, they hide behind their robes, because when they're in there as judge or attorney, they're really actors. They're playing a role, and they're part of a private corporation, and they also are private corporations when they're acting. So this is another thing to think about, is that the people have immunity because they don't exist. So if the state doesn't exist because it's a creation of the mind or a man, the people that work for the state are also parts of the corporation that don't exist. And they're free to do whatever they want to do. So when I tried to notify the San Rafael police and the Nevada police of Judge Adams, Commissioner Longacre, Michelle Moniz, Joanna Kleppe, Chris Hahn, forging legal documents, they didn't want to be involved, and they didn't want to help me because these are people that they deal with. And that's the issue, is that I had no help, for the reason that I'm Muslim and I'm black. And I found that everything was against me.
And you are the father of a biracial son. So what's the nationality of your son's mother and your son's grandparents on the mother's side?
They're
Are they Caucasian?
yes.
So you are a black man in a courtroom going against Caucasian people with a Caucasian judge, Caucasian prosecutors, lawyers, and the pendulum of justice didn't seem to swing your way.
And no, the what am I gonna say? The idea of justice is a dream in the courts, and none of the courts are about justice. The appellate court, they didn't want to intervene about the fake court orders, and neither did the California Supreme Court about the judicial misconduct with Judge Adams. The Commission on Judicial Performance is a protection racket. They're supposed to be the oversight committee of the judges and commissioners, but they don't do anything. So the state is basically funding them, and there's the idea to the public that they're oversight committee that does something about criminal and judicial misconduct. There's been some instances where the state auditor has tried to audit these people, and they've come to some kind of agreement. But even in her audits, I feel that this is like a game or some kind of soap opera, because in my case, the people were committing criminal acts, forging documents, committing felonies, and this auditor, Elaine Howell, in the state is acting as if this is some kind of game. I don't know if the public will really get it, because not everyone in the public has experienced the things that I've experienced dealing with these people in the court.
And these forged documents, you also provided that for the viewers. Do you recall the name of that tape?
Yes, the video we made, to the best of my recollection, the use of void court orders and forgeries by Marin County Superior Court, something like that, or the use of void judgments.
And the viewers will be able to see for themselves the forgery of documents, the blackout of writings, just like you received it yourself.
Yes, we showed that in the video and had the camera zoom in on the redactions and the whiteout. And I knew something was wrong, and I felt like they just do people any old way. So they just gave me these documents that were fake. The original one had whiteout on it, and they just felt like we could just give this man this garbage and steal his money. But, you know, to say it again and re-reference the video, the family court is a color of law court, meaning it resembles court, but it's not real. The child support hearing is more of a sham proceeding, because the commissioner is not even a judge. You think that you're in a court because you have all the same elements with the bailiff and court clerks and everything in the court, but it's actually a scam or fraud, because the executive branch of government is having a court, and they can't do that. So when Bill Clinton enacted this bill and they voted on it, it states that laws or bills passed that are in violation of the Constitution are null and void. So the issue is that they're passed this child support, and they brainwash the people into thinking that this is good for people, but it's really for government gain. People seem to think that when these bills get passed, that they're going to benefit people, but a lot of these bills are for the demise of people. And since we don't have legal knowledge, we don't understand the way that the government works. They have lawyers in all branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial, in order for us to understand that we need to have legal knowledge to understand what they do. There's also no accountability on the treatment of minorities, from the examples of the injustices done to black people and the police killing black people. And since the state, as stated, is an artificial corporation, it gives them immunity. No one is going to hold them accountable, and then they could rig and fix the jury trial for the police to beat the case. The thing is that this experience is just shows that nothing has changed. It's just more sophisticated, and it shows the nature of the state being involved in fraud. The child support is very Freemasonic, satanic. It's stated in another video that we made, where there's a correlation made between the child support agency and the Marin County Family Court with Freemasonry, the Baphomet, which is a goat god that the Templars were accused of worshiping, the Knights Templars. And this is what they represent. So the child support is a way to attack minority men, black men, and poor people, and make them more poor, and act as a bank that's giving a loan out. But the fraud is that the child support agency and the state of California haven't given anyone any loans out. So this is a fraud on behalf of the state, the judges, the justices, that they're just making up a loan that doesn't exist. So they make us a debtor, meaning we owe a debt or that we're a slave. But then once again, they can't prove that they landed the debt. If they prove that they landed the debt, then they would have a legitimate claim. But an artificial corporation, as the state of California or these courts or the child support agency, cannot give loans out. So when you understand the nature of these corporations and their origins, you will see that it's very satanic. These agencies and the people you deal with, the state employees, the police, the sheriffs, are not who you perceive them to be. You know, they're actors or stuntmen, and they don't work for the people. The Supreme Court has stated that it's not the duty of the police to protect the people. But this all becomes aware when you study these things. And why would the state want to fix this, you know, when they can target minority people and assassinate the characters of black people and give them injustice and benefit from it? And they're not going to change it because they're making too much money. You know, they're doing all these wrongdoings, and we're supposed to obey the laws of the land. But here we have the people, like the judges and the sheriffs and the attorneys and the district's attorneys and all these people from the court, and they don't want to be a good example. They should be an example of what this law is about. But they're part of the crime. They're part of the conspiracy. So they don't want it to change. We have Chief Justice Tani Sakuye from the California Supreme Court, and she makes her appearances as the head judge of the California Supreme Court, but it's not in her interest or the best interest of the state for them to stop their billion-dollar for-profit business. It's not in the best interest of the state to treat black men fairly. They use this treatment and they monetize from that. So when they profile someone that's minority, there's something that they could gain from that with the bonds and everything that has to do with a profit. So the answer in the question is that why would they change something if they're benefiting from it? If Judge Adams is using her white supremacy and white privilege, what is the Judicial Council going to do, or the Council on Judicial Performance? They're not going to do anything because they don't want to disrupt the flow of funds. You know, why would somebody change the treatment if it doesn't affect them? So it's like asking white America, why do they care about the treatment of black people? It doesn't affect them, so they don't care. And this is just the reality of the court, is that America gives the appearance that things are fair, but if these people are racist and they're hiding behind their judge robes and they're hiding behind the police uniforms, nothing has changed. So for the people to be informed, they could see this and understand this, but it's just the scam that our government runs. Like every 4 years, everyone's excited about a new president, and they just keep falling for the same pack of lies and all these promises that never are promised or never happen. And this is the state of our affairs of the people, is that we keep falling for this. You vote these people in and they don't work for the people. They work for the treasury and the state. And it's just a fallacy of us thinking that these people will help, you know, and God is the only one that could help us. But our public officials and civil servants and public servants have thrown the Constitution and God inherited rights away, and have been enforcing statutory laws, municipal and statutory codes, which are not law because they all have a monetary value for them to gain.
Well, I'm glad you was able to bring that into a clear perspective for the people. I would like to know, Mr. Wayne D, if you can kind of like create, let's say, a scene of what it was like for you in the courthouse on a particular day or any other day. Was it like, was you heard? Was it one-sided? Was you removed from the court? Just kind of like give the viewers something they can picture of what it was like for you.
A very good question, Reggie, and we could preface this to make a video in the future about the experiences and what to expect in the family court and the child support hearing. It could be either one video or two. But what I experienced was that the whole thing was fixed and rigged. And whatever I did, it didn't matter because they already had their mind set. So I had spoke of this in the child support videos, that when I asked the Commissioner Longacre, or the man known as Christopher Longacre, to provide evidence of a court order or warrant, court order from a trial by jury warrant, writ of execution, notice of levy, to show that I owed any kind of debt, they couldn't show the debt. And they just told me that, you know, if I kept talking, they were gonna arrest me. So they were using bullying tactics against me, and they got upset with me for these people doing wrong to me. So this was the thing, is that they were abusing their positions of power, and they got mad at me because I was asserting my rights for what I thought was in the best interest of our son. And the sheriffs also Marin County Sheriff also played a part in this conspiracy and the kidnapping and extortion of our son. They couldn't provide the evidence, and they couldn't rebut any of my affidavits. Judge Adams, Judge Talamantes, Michelle Moniz, Christopher Longacre, and Judge Kelly Simmons. And what happened was that with the law, it is the affidavit. Unrebutted affidavit stands as truth. So I was speaking the truth. They can't rebut that. But it makes them look bad, and they couldn't look bad, so they just had to railroad me by placing this debt that didn't exist on my record and credit, and also stealing our son, or illegal, what you say, illegal kidnapping. When I went to the probate court, Judge Adams.
Well, Mr. Wayne D, I like to say you gave us something to look forward to as far as in the future. We will speak on your adventures.
All right, let me say this again because I was just letting the lady talk. That when I asked Judge Talamantes, why is he violating my constitutional, civil, and human rights by kidnapping our son, he had the sheriffs remove me from the court, and they got mad at me. And I'm thinking, how can these people be mad at me when these people are staging illegal kidnapping? So once I was saying is that these sheriffs and these people are not who you think that they are. And this is what they did to me. They wronged me, and they took our son away. They took him out of the state. And I've had many instances. I've had doctors not show up to subpoena and forge and take information out of medical records. I had Sandra Hurstfield from the Marin County Youth and Family Services make a false child abuse claim, and then the DA got involved and they took our son away. But when I confronted her about that, she admitted on the record that she made a perjury and none of that was true. But this, once again, is the white privilege and white supremacy, that this lady, Sandra Hurstfield, being a white or Caucasian woman, that she feel like because I'm black, she could just treat me like I'm some kind of animal and just take our son away. But by me getting her to confess that she made a perjury and false statements shows that there's a history of this in the Marin County Family Court. And as stated in my other videos, these people don't want to be accountable, and this is the white privilege. And this is what they do, you know, they hide behind this private corporation, the courts, and they do their dirt in these courts, and no cameras could be in there because a lot of these cases are confidential. And the oversight committee is a part of this scam, a protection racket. The child support agency is an extortion racket because they don't even have any judicial power. They just have contracts with the sheriff, the DA, and banks to take your money from you. And this is the free Masonic and satanic agenda that they have, that the banks are part of this scam. They know that the paperwork is fraudulent, but they're charging fees for collecting money from people's bank accounts. And this is the part of the Freemasonry agenda where you have the United States of America as a corporation in contract with the Federal Reserve, which is a private corporation.
And we'll be able to talk about that on the next video. And it seemed like the white supremacy and white privilege is always nearby, and it strikes again. Anything you want to say on our part, this tape?
Yes, thank you. I would like to say all praise be to Allah, and I'd like to tell the people out there that are going through child support and a family law case and being treated unfairly, that I feel your pain and we feel your pain.
Thank you, sir. And you have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.